Okay, so next up we have an inspiring case study from NIDA, the National Institute of Dramatic Arts, who are doing an absolutely brilliant job of championing the Theatre Green Book agenda in Australia. After a short film, Imogen Ross, Sustainability Manager at NIDA, and Lindsay Brown, Senior Lecturer in Set Construction at NIDA, will be sharing a presentation with us. So thank you very much.
When I heard that NIDA wanted to reduce Sweeney Todd's carbon footprint by 50%, I was personally excited. Theatre has a lot of catching up to do in terms of their environmental responsibility.
When I heard that NIDA wanted to reduce Sweeney Todd's carbon footprint by 50%, I was really excited. In design work, when you're made to be resourceful, it always ends up giving you really surprising results.
It just seemed like a great opportunity to find new ways of expressing design language through using stock materials or materials that were found in one way or another, and just recontextualizing the way we use those things.
The biggest challenge, I think, for us in costume for Sweeney Todd was definitely the amount of costumes that there were. The bulk of the costumes that we needed to source were the punks, the ensemble. They had 3 different looks, minimum, per ensemble member. A lot of costume items we needed to source. We ended up being able to find most of those as vintage items, and the fact that they were vintage or pre-broken down and things like that kind of lended themselves to the world.
We actually sourced a lot of the props off Facebook Marketplace and ended up going to a lot of people's houses and getting their used things that brought a sense of storytelling. Our show was really, really accommodating in the sense that we set it in this sort of punk London in the 80s, so there was a natural logic to all of the materials being used or heavily used in a lot of circumstances.
Creativity thrives best when there's parameters and boundaries, and I think having a responsible, environmentally conscious box around your thinking was really good because we had to be inventive, resourceful and nimble.
A great example of that was the way that we built the brick finish.
We have a Hessian device where we put it over the top of the flats and we can actually rip it off afterwards and save the flats for future use.
So it was incredibly sustainable, and I think will probably be used in future NIDA productions as well.
One of the obviously main things in Sweeney Todd is the pies. And instead of using a whole bunch of real pies that would then go into food waste, we decided that it would be more effective to instead make a series of fake pies that could be reused every single show. These ones were made out of donated expanding foam.
The biggest challenge on the project was keeping everyone on track with sustainable thinking. It becomes really difficult when you are 3 weeks into the theatre to keep in the back of your mind that every decision you make is impacting the planet. I spearheaded the creation of a document that broke down every consumable item we used on the production, every prop, every set element, and where it had come from and where we wanted it to go at the end of the production, just so we could have a baseline for what our impact actually was. The hope for the Waste Tracker is that future NIDA productions can take it and not just use it, but make it better. Hopefully it becomes a reference point in the future so shows can really make and achieve targets.
Theatre is always evolving and reacting to the world around us, and we're facing some really serious issues with the environment, and so I think the practice demands to be changed.
NIDA is trying to implement changes in the way that us as industry professionals leave the institution. It's important for us to take those skills on board so that we can then go into the industry and hopefully implement those changes.
It's really important that when you're devising a show creatively, that you are thinking in terms of sustainability and the impact you're going to have. It's a daunting challenge because the mere act of putting on a show is hard enough, but I think it was very rewarding that we achieved that outcome. Being environmentally conscious doesn't compromise quality. In fact, I think it ensures it.
So my name is Imogen Ross. I'm NIDA's Sustainability Manager, and it gives us great pleasure to join you tonight from Sydney, Australia. It's about 11 p.m. at night here, and my colleague, Lindsay Brown, is here as well.
Hi, everybody. Lovely to be here. Thank you.
Lindsay's our senior lecturer in scenic construction and technologies at NIDA, and we have been collaborating very closely for the last year and a half on embedding Theatre Green Book principles and sustainability in general into our curriculum. And I just wanted to say welcome to Chris Milburn, who I see is on the chat line. Chris has graduated from NIDA and is in Europe. He's on your side of the world now. And he is the young man you saw in the video who wrote the NIDA waste tracker and spearheaded it in the Sweeney Todd video. He'll be staying for the whole conference and can answer questions once Lindsay and I leave and go to bed. I'm just going to share my screen. I have a PowerPoint I would like to share with you. And here we go. There we go. So we just wanted, Lindsay and I wanted to chat to you about how NIDA has adapted the waste acknowledgement form, and we're referring to it across the curriculum as the waste tracker. And I did notice in the new look Theatre Green Book that the word tracker is starting to replace waste acknowledgement form. We're still to see the second edition here in Australia because we're a little bit behind. So we're looking forward to reading that and getting more familiar with the next iteration. But just a little bit about NIDA Green. NIDA Green is the roadmap that we use at NIDA to push environmental sustainability principles embedded across curriculum, student productions, our building infrastructure, and all operations. We run as the National Institute of Dramatic Art, but we also have 5 theatres that are in constant use to public as well as our students. And we have thousands of people come through the door every year. So we've got multiple platforms that we're looking at. Before the COVID lockdowns and after the COVID lockdowns, NIDA reached out to international sustainability experts in theatre, including Paddy Dillon. And after those conversations with staff and outside speakers, we decided to adopt Theatre Green Book as our guiding standard for student-led productions. We have since been, over the last 2 years, we have been running case studies on productions. We now have a target to hit baseline on half of our student-led productions every year. We do 8 major productions, so that means we're aiming to have 4 of them hit clear baseline targets. But I've actually told everyone that everyone has to hit baseline targets and kept the 50% have to reach it out of public hearing, just so that everyone is striving, because I don't want anyone to think that they can be on the side that doesn't. One of the most important things that we've been trialing over the last year and a half is how do we capture the data effectively? And this is where the waste tracker comes in. But I'll just jump to those platforms I mentioned before, just so you can see all the different areas that we're looking at NIDA. The green teams, the green productions, green curriculum, green buildings and operations, and green leadership. So we're trying to hit a whole series of different facets of running a large theatre school. If you're interested in seeing what we're doing, this is a snapshot of our webpage with the link there. So click on that and you can have a bit of an explore around. So that video that you just saw, Sweeney Todd, successfully met its Theatre Green Book targets. 50% of materials had a previous life and 65% of materials were reused. And in fact, I think if looking down here, we managed to look at reusing 62% and recycling 4% of all materials, and only 35% of materials came from new purchased sources in Sweeney Todd, which we were all very excited about. A lot of that had to do with the concept, and this is something that is very important, we've discovered, is where is the director and the designer's concept heading, and are they strongly aligned to the sustainability principles that we have? Sweeney Todd was very strongly aligned, but some of our other productions in 2023 were not as strongly aligned. And so they didn't manage to hit the baseline target in 2023. We're right in the middle of production week this week for season 1, 2024. And we're going to share with you where we're tracking with one of the musicals that's happening this very week. So you all know, we're all Theatre Green Book aficionados. You know what baseline is. I'm going to jump this slide. But just to burrow down into what Sweeney Todd did was not only did it hit the targets, the baseline targets, but we also used the waste tracker that Chris Milburn designed to do a carbon calculation using Chris Mercer and Grace Nye Butler, who are currently writing the Theatre Green Book Australia. They came in as outside experts and they ran the waste tracker through a carbon calculation, and they were able to work out what the carbon would have been if we hadn't done anything, what the carbon was that we used, and what the actual carbon saved was. So on this slide, you can see that we have the new items, the stock items, and the third column is if everything was new, what it would have been. So we actually saved 66% on carbon. So we were very pleased with that one. So Chris Milburn adapted the Theatre Green Book waste acknowledgement form and made it a more bespoke item that could work in with the various assessments that our students are asked to do. So it needed to sort of fit in with our student supervisors, the paperwork they were doing, and he managed to kind of manipulate the waste acknowledgement form in the Theatre Green Book into something that we've now called the waste tracker to differentiate it. And he had a lot of experience prior to coming to NIDA with setting up Excel spreadsheets with algorithms to track data in and out from higher places. So he was able to apply those formula to the waste tracker, which has enabled us to show the percentages of each department individually as they move through and do a rolling total on the front page. This is what the waste tracker looked like in its first iteration. This is the costume page. And you can see that I think there was over 270 items in the costume track for Sweeney Todd. And they used, you can see that in the procurement status in this green, yellow and pink column, Chris has given colors to say where it has come from. There's a little drop-down menu at the top here. When you click on that, it actually prompts the students to know which language to use. And then the second white column tells you where it's come from. And then the final column tells you where it goes at the end of life. So this was the first iteration. This is our second iteration that we're trialing in season 1 right now. And it has a lot more information to make it easier for the students who are looking at it and not sure what to do. It names everyone so that people have a sense of responsibility. And we remind people that it's not a carbon calculator, that this is a qualitative document that's looking at circular economy, and it's not a carbon calculation, though it can be used as such. Stage management has requested their own page in the waste tracker to track consumables compared to all the technical requirements of sound and lighting, because our technical teams tend to use existing stock, whereas stage managers are often using consumable stock. So they wanted to differentiate that. And here on this page, you can see on the left-hand side here, you can see the rolling totals. Now these change every time something goes into this white or pink line. These totals on the left will shift. So it's very visible what the students, they can actually see as they go how they're tracking and where they're sitting within baseline. I'm just going to push over to Lindsay now, who will talk about Spelling Bee, because she was working with Nathan, our third-year scenic supervisor who built this set. Over to you, Lindsay.
Great, thanks, Imogen. Thanks for that. Yeah, so just sort of put a few slides together here. I literally just came from the performance this evening, so I just saw this show just now and had the opportunity to reflect and see the set in its entirety, and essentially start to sort of break it down from Nathan's perspective in terms of how he's been essentially incredibly sustainable on this set. And if we sort of jump to the next slide there, Imogen, I might just sort of come back to this in a second, but just bear in mind that kind of image there on the right hand side, which is the image of the brick flat. Oh, sorry. Yeah, that one there. Thanks, Im. So quite similarly that we did for Sweeney Todd, where we did the Hessian coverage on the flats, we did something very similar with the Spelling Bee set, is that we try to use as much as we can in the way of stocks, sort of flattage and staging and scenery. And that was another sort of system that we use to reuse sets. So I'll come back to that in a second, but the slide that Imogen's brought up for us at the moment is the waste acknowledgement form, and it's similarly a stage management and for the other departments in itself. So what essentially happens with this, so my student Nathan, he's in his third year, he's just took on the role of scenic construction supervisor for Spelling Bee. And he essentially has to break down each of the set elements. So, when you kind of reflect back to the set itself, it was quite a substantial set. It was over 2 layers, 2 floors, a mezzanine, second level, musical. So we had a whole band up on that platform, lots of stock flattage and lots of stock flooring. And we call that stock rostra flooring, essentially with a 9mm MDF show floor. So I think, yeah, a couple of the other presenters, we align a lot with that kind of thing. I was hearing around the show floors are all kind of recyclable in terms of we reuse a lot of our 9mm show floors, and they get repainted and flipped and reused. So that's a great way to kind of recycle and use stock material. But just kind of running down the list of set elements there, you can kind of see how a lot of our flattage, and particularly in this set, I think pretty much 100% of the actual structure of the flats were all taken out of stock and either extended or cut down and resized to the suited design. And then we attached, just dry assembled, attached another layer of plywood over the top that then had the brickwood scenic on it. Because then what tends to happen when we put brick texture on is it's very difficult to then reuse the set or the flat for another performance. So what will happen at the end of the show is we will then remove that skin of brickwork that can go into stock that we can then reuse again in another show, and then the flats then go back into stock themselves. So that was a great example, a bit like in Sweeney Todd. And other things like Yellow Tongue for the mezzanine, that was all stuff
Lindsay,
that again
I'm just going to jump in. So I'm
Sure.
so sorry, Lindsay. I'm just going to jump in because we've only got about 30 seconds of our
Oh,
time left.
oh my gosh. Okay, I'm going too into it. Sorry, Imogen. But yeah, so
no, that's okay. Just to give a quick description of how we marry this with our pre-Theatre Green Book.
Yeah,
and then
sure. Thanks, Im. Yeah, so then essentially now what we're doing is we're pretty much adapting that waste tracker into our own breakdown, which then enables us to really start to sort of see from a percentage perspective what's from a circular stock, what's then kind of being built new and then going back into stock, or what we're kind of recycling and then putting into like a recycling skip. And then that gives us in that final column there that Imogen's just kind of and the way that it's kind of calculated when we put in how many set elements are, we can actually start to record how much is actually going into landfills. So this is kind of a bit of an adapted formula that we're taking out of out of Chris's tracker as well. So they kind of work in unison with one another. So I was getting a bit excited about how we was using that set and the sustainability aspects of it there, Imogen. But yeah, thanks for stopping me in my tracks. And yeah, that's
all right. It's tricky. It's tricky sharing. We've got so much to share with you, but
I
it was very
know,
hard
I
to
know.
find just 15 minutes to share with you. But I know that there's a lot packed in. So I think we might have to say goodbye to you all. Thanks for including us in this wonderful conference. And
Yeah, we really
we look forward
appreciate
to
the
being
time.
participants.